Okay. This time I got it. Ah, dang it. I messed up my Vim macros again. Why is it so hard? Alright, this time I'll get it.
Yo, babe. What the hell are those noises that nerd's making over there?
Oh, no. Don't worry about him, baby. He's just a Vim user. What's good, baby? Remember me?
What? What are you doing here? Beat it, broad!
Why can't I find a real editor?
Vim, Git, and Markdown. These are things usually associated with programming, but in this video I want to show you guys how they could be useful for non-programmers as well. Alright, so this is what it looks like. Markdown syntax is super simple, and when we're in Vim, you look at the bottom left corner here, I put this exclamation point. I don't even have to leave Vim to execute Pandoc commands. So what we do is we write pandoc-o we do demo.html, and it's going to infer the file type from the extension. Then we do the source file. So let's see what this looks like here. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh. So here we got Pandoc is epic. You can see it's just default HTML styling. We can make it look a little bit better by using the -s for standalone. Standalone always looks nicer. So let's see what that looks like. You see it's a little bit more centered and it's nicer that way. Next, let's try to use our styling. So ChatGPT generated this for me. I just asked for a CSS style sheet for Pandoc in dark mode, and I'll show you what that looks like. So we got dark mode here, so you can see how simple that was to use. And let's try PDF as well, even though PDF is kind of stinky. That's okay though. Let's do pandoc-o, and then this time we'll do demo.pdf, and we'll include our demo. We have to choose a PDF engine, so we do --pdf-engine. I like to use XeLaTeX, and we'll try this out. You see how long it's taking? There we go. It took like a second, maybe 2 seconds. PDF takes forever. It's so slow. You could see it's just like a worse version of HTML basically. The figure gets put on a different page. It's kind of nice that it does that. If someone asks for a PDF, that can be helpful. Now, let's try to share this. So what I do, I have a command. I call it cpb256. And what I'll do is I'll just type the name of the file I want to upload, and this will upload it to my server and return a link. So there we go, we have that. And I can alt click it in the terminal and it'll open it. Now you can see here, the issue is where the hell is our cool styling and stuff? Also, if we open this image, if I zoom in here, it uses an href, which means it's not going to be available offline. So the way we get around that is when we compile with Pandoc. Oh, sorry, none of it's in here. We go back here. Let's go to the external commands we were doing earlier, and we're going to do a -- embed resources flag. All right, now that we did that, let's exit here and let's upload it to the server again. We get a different link. Let's open this, and now you can see it works. And if we check out this image here, we zoom in. This is base 64, so it's available offline, which is super convenient. You can share this HTML offline and it'll still work. Now we have this link here. If I was going to share this with someone, probably what I would do is I would pipe it into Wayland copy. Now it's actually on my clipboard, so if I open a new tab, I could paste this in. And there it is. Now, if I want to share it across computers, it gets a little bit more complicated. Let's try. First of all, we echo poop, and it puts poop in the terminal. Now, let's pipe this into QR encode. And we're going to use -t with ANSI. And this is going to generate a huge QR code. It's not that big. And this is QR encode of poop, of the word poop. Now, if we want to actually do something useful, we can do the link that we generated earlier after we uploaded our demo.html. So we have that. Now let's just pipe it into QR encode. So if you're watching this video, you can scan this right now with your phone and it'll bring you to the website. I'll also demonstrate it here. So to do that, I'm gonna have to disable my webcam. So let's do that. Bye guys, see ya. And I'm gonna switch to the recording in OBS of my Windows PC. So you can see that here. Got my webcam disabled. I'm gonna allow it to use my camera. It's taking forever. There we go. And I'm gonna pull up my QR code. There we go. It scanned it using my webcam. I'm gonna copy this. Let's navigate to it. And there's our file. Anytime I want to write something, lab reports, articles, math tables, images, slideshows, I use the same method: Vim, Markdown, and Pandoc. A year ago, literally today, I had no Vim, no Linux, or Git command line experience. And today, I use Unix exclusively for all programming and document preparation. Last year, I completely wiped Windows and I switched 100% to Unix. I use Vim, specifically NeoVim, just out of habit. People told me to use NeoVim because it's got support for plugins and stuff. I never install plugins, but I use Vim, just raw Vim. My terminal is default. There's no fancy colors, no color scheme, nothing. I even switched my keyboard layout to Colmac DH with home row mods, because I was so serious about trying this attempt, right? So a year ago, I was using Visual Studio, Microsoft Visual Studio, and trust me, I really like the hotkeys in Microsoft Visual Studio. I would do this Alt arrow thing to move the line up and down. You hold the Control Shift and you can do multi-line editing and stuff. It was really nice, and I really liked the hotkeys. Like even the most autistic people in my major, I swear, in my computer science major, I knew the hotkeys better than them. So it was a bum to move to Vim and not be able to use those hotkeys anymore. But after I made the switch, I realized that I didn't need those hotkeys. Let's back up. The reason why I made the switch is I was playing Civ 5. I didn't play a single video game for like a year, and I was starting to realize when I was playing Civ 5 that if I have the opportunity to, if I'm able to, I'm always going to use hotkeys. There's never a moment where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to use hotkeys, I'd rather just use the mouse, if I know it, right? So I kept, you play Civ 5 for long enough, I have like 1,000 hours in that game. I was never a hotkey or keyboard wizard or nothing. I was a FPS player. I liked using my mouse. I like clicking on stuff. But you do something for long enough, you start to gravitate towards the keyboard. It's just so natural and so nice to use the keyboard. Instead, Civ 5 has an amazing UI. It's so nice to click on buttons. Those buttons are so juicy in Civilization 5. And regardless, every time I'm building a farm, I'm like, this is so repetitive. I have to click the farm button every time, and I start to realize about every action in the game you can take with a unit has a hotkey. So you just hover over. Oh, you press I to build a farm. Okay, and then you slowly learn all the hotkeys. Like, for example, I could tell you right now. Camp. There's some little foxes running around in a hex, or there's some ivory, some elephants. H is to build a farm. P for plantation, I think. R for road. I think I remember a lot of these. I for farm, I believe. And I started to realize, like, you can't do everything with the mouse, but the more you can do with the keyboard, the better. So I decided to adopt a more terminal-centric flow. I guess another person who inspired me to do this was I think his name is Soding Daily, T-S-O-Ding Daily, this Russian guy, and I was watching him use like Emacs and a bunch of other stuff, and I think that was inspiring, like, oh, I could do this. Another guy, there's Tantan. Tantan is this guy, he's got long hair, he's from Scandinavia or something, I believe, and he made these videos where he did exclusively keyboard-centric stuff. In Tantan's videos, he managed to do everything with the keyboard on his computer. And he talked about Vim a lot. This is where I got introduced to the idea of using Vim. Vim is a modal editor, right? So Vim has certain modes where, like, if you mess up, suddenly you enter a different mode, and you're not, like, in the text editor like you expect to be normally. You can't just move around with the arrow keys. In fact, in Vim, you're actively encouraged to not use the arrow keys. You're supposed to use HJKL, right? And then it turns out you're not supposed to use that either necessarily. You're supposed to learn word-based motions, sentence-based motions, paragraph-based motions. You're supposed to get as efficient as possible and take as many shortcuts as possible. Now, a lot of people switch to Unix because they don't want spyware. They don't want the government to spy on them or something, or they're edgy, or they want to rice out their setup and make it look cool or something. I don't mess with any of that. Like I said, I just use the default terminal. I do not care. The reason why I use Unix is because I want package managers. In Windows, I don't know, so many times you're trying to install something in Windows. It's like, well, how do I get the installer for it? Do I do it with the command line or script or what? And then it's so complicated. Generally in Unix, when I need something installed, it's just sudo apt install and then the name of what I want. Like Firefox, right? Sudo apt install Firefox, sudo apt install VLC. Now I got VLC, now I got Firefox. The other thing is, like, you do install things on Windows, but sometimes just setting it up, it just doesn't work. Like, I remember trying to install Python on Windows, and it was such a pain. Like, it was so hard to install Python. You would think that would be easy, right? Let's address the alternative. And I used to use these two, of course, Google Docs, Microsoft Word. These are nice because they are hosting your files remotely, and they kind of save stuff very often. And of course they have a lot of features, right? You got your equations and stuff. If you want to insert those, you can style stuff however you want. But Markdown is better, I'll tell you why. So think about Google Docs. How many times have you been, like, working with your group mates, or maybe at work or something, and someone is just in there collaborating, and they put like a stupid random indent, or they put an inconsistent heading, or they put like an extra space, or they style like the fonts like slightly different sizes. This is so silly, right? You're never gonna need the feature to have one paragraph be a different size than the other, right? You're always gonna be wanting to have your paragraphs the same size. You always want consistent headings. I once had a teacher, and she was teaching a communications class, and she really emphasized she wanted consistent formatting. And so we couldn't even use Google Docs. We had to use Microsoft Word, because Microsoft Word was better about making the styling consistent across headings. So at the time, I remember thinking, like, there's gotta be a better solution to this, right? Than, like going through all your headings and selecting them and setting the styling for them individually and, like, making sure they're consistent. It's silly, right? The funny thing about Google Docs is Google Docs... Eventually now Google Docs lets you write Markdown in Google Docs. So if you put like a hash into Google Docs, it'll be like, oh, you want a heading 1. Or if you put I think you can bold stuff with like asterisks and stuff. And it just goes to show like how helpful Markdown is, that even Google Docs uses it. But here's the thing. I'll argue in this video that you should not be worrying about your styling. You should be worrying about your writing, right? And that's what Markdown enables you to do. The syntax is simpler than anything you've ever used. Markdown syntax is so simple. I write a whole Markdown file, like my whole article or write-up or whatever it is, and then I basically compile it once or twice, and there's no mistakes. Like, you're not gonna say, oh, I made that a huge mistake and then edit it a bunch. It's minimal. It's minimal. You just write something and it's so effortless. Versus Google Docs, you have to stare at the end styling of your product and you have to worry about the styling every time you make something. Well, the styling isn't going to change that much per assignment or per article or thing you write. You should worry about the styling later. Write a template. Pandoc supports templates. You can have an HTML template file and you can use that for any Markdown file. Pandoc is so simple, right? You just you specify the output file format, or I mean, really, you just specify the output file, and it looks at the file extension and it figures out what you need to convert it to. You can also export to HTML or PDF, and when you export to HTML, you can embed images in the HTML. So you get all the advantages of PDF minus the disadvantages of PDF. PDF is slow. PDF sucks with, you have a page break all the time, right? How many times have you been reading something and then you have a figure, right? And then it gets like put on a different page and then you're supposed to like look 1 or 2 pages ahead to view the figure. It's so stupid. In the modern age, when everything is being viewed in the browser, we should just be using HTML. It doesn't make sense to use PDF. With HTML, if you want to embed an image, it's as simple as you add --embed -resources for Pandoc. Next, it's funny how people reinvent the wheel. Like, I see people talking all the time about, or not people, but like I've seen instances where there's like these apps that are for writing, and the thing they're trying to sell you is that, well, when you revise your writing, there's a lot of stuff you threw away. Well, we'll save every version of everything you throw away so that you can compile it later and make something out of your deleted writing. And it's just so funny to hear people who don't know, we'll just call them normies, who don't know about Git, basically talking about like how they want Git. And, you know, a year ago, I wasn't that good at Git. I was reliant on GitHub Desktop if I want to do something. I had a class where we learned about version control, and I said, this is stupid. Why do we have to do this with the command line when there's a GUI for it? This is so, like, we're doing it the ancient way or whatever. I had a class where we learned about Unix, and I had to do Vim tutor. I had to learn Vim, and I was like, this is weird. Why would I ever edit in Vim or whatever? What is the point of this? And I've slowly got humbled over time, and I have arguments with people who are stuck in the first phase, the phase that I was in, and they're like, oh, I like to get GUI because I could see it easier, it's not as hard. GitHub GUI is a nice application. However, Git is like the perfect command line tool. It's like it's like an example of what command line tools can be, how helpful and how useful and how good they can look. It's such a nice tool to use over the command line. And if you're a computer science major or a programmer or a software engineer, you have no excuse for not learning Git via the command line. Anytime you want to do anything complicated, you can't be searching for a little drop-down menu or some item in a GUI in GitHub Desktop when you need to check out a branch or stash some stuff, or I don't know, just amend a commit or something. Like, you need to just, it's not that hard. I understand that it seems daunting and it can be really boring to learn these tools and really scary at first. But listen, I went a year. It took me a year to get to the point where I do so much stuff over the terminal. And note that something else, I got a virtual private server. A virtual private server, mine's in Seattle. It's a computer that is remote on the cloud that I can access anytime I want. That's the advantage of using a terminal, is that if it's running on Unix, you can use SSH to access access that terminal anywhere in the world, right? I can get into that computer from an unrelated computer as long as I have like the right password and permissions and stuff. It's kind of similar to how in Google Docs you're like, oh, I'm so glad that I can go to the browser and use this anywhere and I'll have access to my code. Well, you have the same thing with Git. You have the same thing if you have a VPS, right? Because you can host your files wherever you want. And in my experience, it's easier to host files on my VPS and share them. So what I do on my VPS, I have a website. It's at ben256.com. And what I like to do is I hash my files. When you hash it, it generates a signature. It uniquely identifies the file. That makes sure that I never have duplicates on my server. Then I put that in the URL along with the file, and I can send that to anyone, and then they can just open it up. Like you go to ben256.com. The notes for this video are ben256.com/markdownrant.html. There's also a markdownrant.md, and that's just one example of how easy it is to share things. And when I'm in the terminal, like we said earlier, it's so nice to be able to use a package manager. I found out there's a program called QR encode. You can sudo apt install QR encode, and then when you have your URL that you host on your website, you just pipe it into QR encode, and you can generate a QR code on your laptop, and then you tell your lab partner or whoever you want to share it with, hey, scan this on your phone, and now they have it on their phone. No emailing required. If you don't want to be so specific and have a giant hash in the URL, then you can just straight up put it on, like ben256.com markdownrant.html. I didn't hash that or anything. I just stuck it on the website to make it convenient to use. Now, personally, what I do is if I'm going to submit an assignment, and again, to reiterate, I submitted every single assignment using Markdown. I haven't submitted any assignments using Google Docs or nothing or anything else. Whenever they ask for PDF is a stupid format. And sometimes, especially if you have a lot of images, it can look really bad in a PDF. Even if Pandoc converts it, it does its best, right? But if you have a ton of images, they're not going to all fit on one page. And PDF has the stupid thing where there's page breaks all the time, as if you're going to print it or something. Nobody prints anything anymore. So it's okay. What you do, the PDF version can be inferior. And you can upload that to your course website or whoever needs the PDF. But then you just put a link in the PDF and link to your HTML version, which is superior. Or I go in the comments of my submission and I say, hey, check out the HTML version. It's better. Even though you asked for a PDF, I gave you one, but the HTML is better. You might as well read that. And then I never get any concerns from my grader, like, hey, I can't read this because the figures are hard to read. No, there's an HTML version, and the HTML version looks so good. Pandoc's default conversion and the styling for HTML looks just good enough. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. You can even do slides in HTML using Pandoc, and the library is reveal.js. And these slides, let me tell you, these slides are superior in every way to PowerPoint format or whatever, because when you export PowerPoint, your browser doesn't open that easily, right? So what you end up doing is, I just had a class where the teacher, he converted his slides, the PowerPoint format, into PDF. So then you had to constantly download this stupid huge PDF, and it was just a waste, right? Versus HTML. HTML is faster than PDF and just so much more convenient, right? That's what the browser is for. How many times are you going to download a PDF file? PDF parentheses 1, PDF parentheses 2, parentheses 3, parentheses 4. How many times am I going to download this file if I'm just going to delete it? Or I have to remember to delete it. That's what the browser is for. That's why you serve files statically on a website. HTML slides are epic, and they look cooler. They look more professional and more epicer, okay, objectively. Now, a lot of people do static site generation. What that is, basically, is people don't want to have to write raw HTML every time they make a new article, of course. So what some people do, well, some people, they do just write HTML, and that's kind of cringe. There's this really cool guy. I really like this guy. He's like a bipolar schizophrenic guy, and he's bald. And his name is Luke Smith, and he's like afraid of the government, so he lives in the woods. But he has a really excellent tutorial on how to set up your website, and that's what I followed to set up my website with my VPS and stuff. And he was a big advocate. He started making this video. He's like, look, I'm about to start writing raw HTML. And it's such a pain to write HTML like plain, especially if you're doing a lot of it. Every time you need a paragraph, you need to put a P tag. It's so goofy. That's what Markdown is for. You don't want to be opening a tag and closing your tag and making sure you have the right tag and blah, blah, and then writing your HTML boilerplate. That's what Pandoc handles that for you. That's what the -s, the -- standalone flag does in Pandoc. It gives you boilerplate for your HTML, converts your Markdown into HTML, semantic HTML. Now, I had a friend who he decided he was going to make a static site, and he was going to generate it. He's going to do a static site generator. And I don't know why people do this. I've seen a lot of programmers doing this. They think, oh, I'm a programmer. I'm going to write it in Markdown, and I'm going to convert it to HTML myself. Guys, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Pandoc does everything for us. If you don't like the styling, that's why you use an HTML template. And all it does is it does substitution. It substitutes the text and puts it into the HTML template that you provide with the styling that you want. I'll give you an example. If you go to ben256.com/read, I published a bunch of public domain Plato texts from like Plato the philosopher. I was trying to get my friends to read Plato, and it didn't really work. However, what you could do with this, right? You can see the site. I added in a little bar that scrolls. It shows the completion, like how much you've read the article. I added in a nav that is like statically generated. There's whenever I update the pages, there's like an automatic script that runs and updates the last updated. It's so nice. There's even footnotes are supported through Markdown if you use Pandoc. It's so awesome. And then everything has the right styling. Everything looks nice. You compare that to where I got the source material. I went to Project Gutenberg, and these websites, they're for archival purposes. They're not for like reading the whole text, right? They suck for that because they have like these terrible old sites. They're like horrible to read. So what you do, or what I did, is I went and I got the UTF-8 for it. I just copied it. I did this tiniest little bit of like edits in Vim to make it a correctly formatted Markdown file. I put in a little bit of metadata, title, author, translator, and then I just run a script like I do on every other Plato text that I've uploaded. So if you go to ben256.com/read, you can see that, and you can see an example of me. Everything I wrote there is Markdown. Finally, we have to talk about LaTeX. LaTeX, in some ways, is important, mainly for math equations. In other ways, it's like a worse version of Markdown. So I've seen graduate students, they write entire documents in LaTeX, and hopefully they're using templates. If not, they probably want to kill themselves, because LaTeX, it has all these /begin, /end, use package, or like whatever. There's so much garbage in LaTeX, like just to make like an unordered list or something it takes so much effort mentally, and so much you have to remember so much. Like you might as well just ask AI to write the LaTeX document for you. If you're gonna write something yourself, don't write it in LaTeX. If you want math equations, well, also don't use Google Docs and like go and look through a big menu with like a big table like, oh, how do I make a fraction? Oh, I gotta go look for the fraction. Oh, I gotta do the square root. Instead of doing the goofy parts of LaTeX in LaTeX, do all the goofy parts of LaTeX in Markdown. Using Pandoc, you can embed LaTeX into your Markdown. So you get all the upsides of LaTeX. You can put LaTeX equations into your Markdown, and then you don't have to do titles or headings with LaTeX. if you want to be a boomer and write your whole page in just raw HTML, well, you also don't have an excuse for not using Markdown and Pandoc. You can embed HTML into your Markdown if a template isn't working for you. Finally, how many times have you seen a code example in a PDF or something, especially if you're like a college, like a CS major, right? The professors, they're always putting they just put these like black and white, like they paste code into Google Docs and it's black and white. Sometimes it's not even monospace and there's no syntax highlighting. This is so goofy. There's an obvious solution and they just don't bother to find it, okay? The solution is the same thing that your README uses on GitHub. When you have a GitHub README, you write Markdown and you put your code in, and you do like 3 backticks, and then you put the name of the programming language that the code is made out of, right? And then the GitHub interprets it. The GitHub interpreter for the Markdown converts it into HTML or PDF, or I guess you could get a PDF or whatever. It does that with correct syntax highlighting for the language. You can do that with Pandoc and Markdown. You don't need GitHub's version or whatever. I've done this a million times. Every time I put code in, I specify the language into the Markdown file. I embed that code in there, and then when I export it as HTML, it looks beautiful. It correctly syntax highlights it. It's all monospace, or it's all monospace. PDF sometimes breaks if you have really wide code, like a comment. It's like goes on forever. But if you export as HTML, you use the standalone flag, it'll give you a scrollable region. So it'll get cut off, but if you want to see the rest of the line, you can scroll horizontally. So I want to emphasize, like, if I wish I had a book to write. I wish I was like some kind of novelist or author or something, because it is so enjoyable writing Markdown. Every time I write Markdown, I'm gonna climax when I write Markdown, okay? We gotta stop writing in Word or Docs, okay? Especially as programmers, it's cringe. We gotta stop doing this. We shouldn't be rewriting static site generators when Pandoc does it for us. I installed it once and it's amazing and beautiful. And then next time you're going to make some slides, consider using Pandoc. And next time you're going to make a website, go ask ChatGPT, hey, ChatGPT, how do I convert Markdown into HTML with a nice template so that my HTML styling looks nice? And just have it generate an example template and then mess with it until you like the styling. Always use Markdown for any writing you do, because it's distraction free. You don't have to worry about the styling. You just spit out some Markdown. And version control with Git. Don't be reliant on Google Drive or something, and learn Git via the command line. You don't have to learn Vim, but Vim helps when you're writing Markdown, and when you're writing anything, Vim helps. Also, HTML is the future. HTML is so much better than PDF. PDF is slow, it sucks, and we need to stop like this format of like things have page breaks and things are cut into pages. Nobody prints stuff anymore. And additionally, you can print your HTML if you want it printed, and then you can get it in like a page format. I've done that. Whenever I'm making a cheat sheet for my classes, for my exams, I'll write it all in HTML. Sometimes I'll even ask ChatGPT. I'll have all the material. I'll say, hey, put this into columns so it fits on a page nicely. I'm not going to write that in Google Word or Google Docs. Now, suddenly you write it in Google Docs and Google Word, you can't even fit as much stuff on the page as if you use HTML in the first place and just use the print feature, right? You can print HTML. You can even specify specific styling for if you're printing. And then compare and contrast, like you're reading a textbook for your class versus have you ever read like a nice Medium article, or and maybe someone in this channel has used learnopengl.com. Like that is such a nice website, such a nice web resource. These web resources are so cool. They look nice. They make you feel like an epic gamer just by like scrolling through them. these are my takeaways. It took me a year to learn Vim, to learn Markdown, using Pandoc, using Git via the command line, and also like December-ish, I switched to my new keyboard layout, and I still use that. There's so many things you can do. Try installing Ubuntu. Try to dual boot it. If you don't want to dual boot it, use the Windows subsystem Linux or whatever it's called, WSL, I think. Currently, I'm trying to set up a membership at ben256.com. You could check out the website if you want, but there's no way to sign up. There's no way to support me there. But I do recommend, if you want updates, go to Discord. Just don't be a butthead, but I will help you if you go to Discord. I'm helping people out all the time there, usually for procedural animation stuff. There's people in there who will help you out as well. And you can select notify for live streams, YouTube uploads, for code, whatever you want in there, so you can really get granular with what kind of notifications you receive.